Why are certain people so rich and why do the majority of people struggle financially? That's a great question and a very difficult one that most people just wonder about their entire life without ever finding an answer. In fact, while this is a complicated question, and there are definitely a number of factors that contribute to this, there is one factor that most of you, I'm sure, are not aware of. Most of you are completely obscure about the concept of scalability. In fact, this is one of the main reasons why rich people are rich and rich people will get richer in time. So, what do I mean with scalability? Where does this concept come from? And how does it apply to our current society and to our time and age? So, scalability, the concept of scalability, really stems from the Industrial Revolution when people started building and owning and operating these huge, enormous factories. What people quickly realized was that while it takes a large amount of money, a huge amount of capital, as we call it in economics term, a huge amount of capital in order to build a factory. That's because, of course, you need to own land or to purchase land. You need to build a factory that can accommodate for certain production capacity and so on and so forth. So while only a few people could build a factory, what factory owners saw was that there was a huge amount of capital needed for building the factory. But once that was done, while you put aside what we call the fixed costs, so the cost, for example, of building a factory, then the incremental cost you will have in producing certain goods, it would be actually decreasing over time with quantity. That sounds strange, I would say, the first time you hear it, and almost magical. How can a higher quantity of something cost less than cost less than a smaller amount, right? That's counterintuitive. So let me tell you why. If you, as I said, if you totally take out of the equation the fixed cost, once you start producing at a higher volume, then the cost you have can be spread over the amount of goods you're producing, right? So take the example of a shoe factory. If you're making 100 shoes, you still have an entire infrastructure that you need to sustain. You need a factory, you need the machinery, you need the people to operate the machinery, and you need the raw materials in order to put together shoes. Now, if you were to produce 100 shoes and produce 1 million shoes, you see that the factors that are involved, the raw input is basically the same. But now, as you know, when you buy in bulk, if you buy a lot of the same thing, you're entitled to a discount. So when you're actually looking at producing 1 million shoes over 100 shoes, the cost of that 1 millionth shoe is actually lower. The production cost is actually lower than the cost of the 100th shoe you produce. Let that sink in for a second, right? You're producing more and you're spending less for the individual item. Mind you, I'm speaking variable cost, incremental cost, not total cost, right? So this is what the factory owners found out back in the 1800s. The concept is what we call scalability and economies of scale. And it widely applies also to today's society. Of course, still, just like it was before, not many people own factories. And in fact, nowadays, I think almost none of us will think about starting a factory up from scratch. But the concept of spending less to make more of a product still largely applies. In particular, take the same mechanism to intangible goods. So now, instead of having a factory, you have a programmer that puts together a huge amount of line of codes and packages it with a fancy name. That's what we call a software. puts in the same effort to create a software that can be sold to 100 people than it would just put if we were to create a software that can be sold to 1 billion people. Again, it's just one person doing the job, the same job that can be actually resold to a wider audience. So ultimately, you can make a lot more money. So that's by definition a software production company. To continue with the example, is by definition as scalable of a business. You may argue, of course, that in order to create more complicated software or additional software, you would need more programmers. But the concept, the underlying concept and core mechanism still applies of scalability. Rich people understand that in order to be rich, you need to engage on scalable activities, where basically, if you want to make more money, you do not need to put in more time or more money, right? So that's what scalability is about. That's, as I said in the beginning, how rich people got rich, the vast majority at least, and how rich people will keep getting richer. Now, how does this apply to you? What can you take, what can you make out of this information? Well, when looking at investing in a business, starting your own business, always ask yourself, does this company, does this idea, does this investment scale? Will it be easy to make more money once we go big? If the answer is yes, well, it may be an idea worth pursuing. If not, you may still decide to go ahead, but it will be harder to make a lot of money. So always consider scalability. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments below if you knew about scalability and how you're going to apply this concept in your business life from now on. Good luck.